My guest today is an executive coach, an advisor, and keeper of secrets who guides and offers another point of view to help people see a new perspective. At the age of 56, he began competing in Ironman Triathlons. As a six-time finisher, he knows tons about overcoming adversity. He believes age is just a number, there is no expiration date on dreams, and anything really is possible. Please welcome to the show, Michale Bryant.
Thanks a lot for having me, Ben.
Thanks, Michale. Great to have you here. How has your Saturday been so far?
So good. So far, so good. Yes, it's warm here today. We're 85 Fahrenheit, so it's warm. So I got in an early run this morning. Run.
You're in Baltimore, right?
Yes, Baltimore, right. Yeah, right outside of DC. Yeah, not far from Washington. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And I'm over here in Canberra. It's crazy how, there's no limits in the world now. We can connect to anybody and have a chat with people. It's great.
Isn't it amazing how we can do that now? The technology is so great now. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Right.
So tell me, what inspired you to do, at the end, it's not typical thing that people do, when they get to 56 years old to suddenly decide to start doing triathlons, if anything, they might be, sort of chilling and reading their newspapers, so.
Yes. Yeah, I kind of like to think my life has been sort of atypical. So this is just one. It's funny because 40 years ago when I started the business, my goal was not to have a successful career. It was to have an effective life. And so I certainly wanted a successful career to be part of that, but I really wanted to have a really interesting kind of life. And one of the things that I do is I'm in the business of working with people when they're stuck in one part of their life or another. It could be leading people, it could be communicating well, it could be a personal part of their life, it could just be their confidence. And I ask people to stretch and really sort of jump outside of their comfort zone, because what happens is as we age developmentally, we become more risk averse. We become less willing to try new things. We become sort of enamored with this sort of never ending and always decreasing comfort zone. We want to do things in the same way with the same people. And so, I thought that since I was asking people to stretch, that it was really important that I sort of keep myself honest. So I decided that I would do one thing a year that would have two criteria. One is that it would be very exciting. And the second is it would scare me out of my mind. And I thought, well, that'll make me jump out of my comfort zone, and that'll get me to stretch. Because the deal seems to be no risk, no growth. So if you want to grow as a human being, you're going to have to take risk and do things that might initially seem uncomfortable. So I had done things like, one year I decided to walk on hot coals. I thought, well, that could be pretty terrifying. And another year I decided to repair a relationship. That was kind of scary to do. And so I had a background in athletics. I was a high school and collegiate wrestler. And, when you finish that sport, there's not much you can do with it. You can't have like a pickup wrestling match or something. It doesn't lend itself to that. So the only thing I could do when I wasn't wrestling that I could do when I was wrestling is I could run, because I had to run to lose weight. And so I became a runner. Well, in 1985, triathlons had just begun in the late 70s in California. And the only triathlon I'd ever heard of was Ironman in Hawaii. And of course, I wasn't going to do that because that was for insane people. I just couldn't even fathom what these people were doing. And so what happened was I was at a friend's house, and her friend was a race director. And she said, have you ever thought about doing a triathlon? Because she was going to be a race director for a local race that was coming to Baltimore. And the only triathlon I'd ever heard of was Ironman. And I said, no, I've never thought of doing one, and I never will. She said, no, there are different distances. This is an Olympic distance. It's a 1 mile swim and a 25-mile bike and then a 10-kilometer run. And she said, can you swim? And I said, yes, I can swim. Do you have a bike? I said, yeah, with 35-pound 10-speed in my basement that I never ride. She said, well, that's a bike. And she said, and can you run? I said, I am a runner. So I said, well, how many days do you have to finish this? She said, no, you do it all at one time. And I said, I'll die. She said, you won't die. And so I did the race. I didn't die. I got hooked on these shorter distances. And for about 7 years, I did triathlons. But then the series left town and there weren't a lot of races. So it stopped. So I figured, you know what? That was interesting. That'll be the chapter in my life. I'm going to go back to running, work my way up to marathon distance. Meanwhile, my wife is from New York State. Her family in the summers had a farmhouse up in the Adirondack Mountains in New York. Lake Placid, where the home of 2 Winter Olympics is near where she spent the summers. I meet my wife. I fall in love with the Adirondacks about 15, 18 years ago. We buy a house up there, a vacation home. And I just want to be part of the community now and sort of be involved in things. Ironman has now expanded. I'm not doing Ironman, but it's expanded. So I'll help out. So one of the things you do when you help out is you go in for the last 2 hours of the race. It's a 17-hour day. The last 2 hours, the finishing is just extraordinary. These are people that you see walking down the street. These do not look like people that have the physical ability to do something like this. And I was just blown away by this. And I'm not the kind of person that likes to watch. Like, I don't like parades because I don't like to watch. I like to do. I looked at this thing and I said, I'm doing this. I am going to do one of these things. And so what got me started was really this desire that I wanted to have the experience. I just wanted to be in that parade. I wanted to be one of those people because they just were in this incredibly joyful state, that you just don't see adults very often with that sense of just joyfulness coming across that finish line. I said, I want some of that. So that's what really got me started.
And that was the full Ironman Triathlon.
That was the full. Little did I know the life lessons that would come out of this thing that I was not prepared. I'd signed up for the 2006 Ironman. I'll turn 56 at that time. And in 2006, I was going to be 56. So the summer before at 55, I thought, you need to be in probably start getting in like real shape because the kind of shape you have to be on for this thing, I can't fathom. It's going to be way beyond anything I've prepared for. So we're in Lake Placid. The lake where the race is going to be held is the lake we go to all the time. And I said, well, I'm going to go out and do what's called a loop. It's a 1.2 mile rectangular course. They call them a loop. There's 2 of those. You do 2.4 miles. So I said, well, I'll go do 1.2 miles. I can swim that. It's not a very good day for being on the beach. It's kind of overcast and cloudy. I put on my wetsuit, into the water I go. I'm swimming, and of course I'm wet. All of a sudden I notice I'm wetter, and I look up and it's raining. Well, I don't care. I'm in the water, it's raining, and I'm wet already. Then as I swim a little more, I notice that it's really getting wet. I look up and it's a torrential downpour. I'm in the middle of the lake. It's a pretty good sized lake. I'm in the middle of the lake. I can see off in the distance the town, and people are sort of scurrying to try to get out of the rain. I look up at a mountain range in front of me. I see these very dark clouds starting to come over very, very quickly. I begin to get a little bit concerned. Then I hear thunder. I said, oh no, this is, no, we're going to need to break this off. That's going to be the end of the swim. As I start to break off to begin to swim towards some kind of shore, I look at the end of the lake and I see lightning hit the lake. Now I'm getting really concerned. I'm probably no more than another minute into starting my swim. I hear a second crack of lightning. My right cap knots up and then right through the top of my head, and out the top of my head it goes. And I said to myself, you just got hit. Lightning just hit the lake and just went right through you. Now, I was in high school and college. I was a lifeguard and I managed pools, and I was a water safety instructor. So I knew very well that when somebody is in danger in the water, you don't panic, never thinking that I would be the one in danger. So very quickly I decided, panic, we can't do panic. I could still swim. My left cap hurt, but I could still swim. And I said, you need to come up with a plan. So I said, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to swim as fast as I can. I mean, I'm a pretty good swimmer, but I can't outrun electricity. I'm not that fast. And so I'm going to swim, then I'm going to stop, and I'm going to scream at the top of my lungs for somebody to come get me. I'm going to swim, scream, swim, scream, swim, scream. And one of 3 things is going to happen. I am either going to make it to the shore. Somebody's going to come rescue me, or I'm going to get hit again. And I can't think of much of anything else. So off I go, unbeknownst to me. I mean, I'm the only knucklehead out there, as it turns out. One of the things, as a water safety instructor is you never go swim alone, but that's another conversation about the irony of that. I mean, talk about, but you kind of are where you are, so you have to deal with the situation as it exists. Woulda, coulda, shoulda is not going to really get you real far. So, unbeknownst to me, I'm the only one out there. There was somebody in a metal rowboat had gotten out of that, had the presence of mind. They called 911. There are two young ladies putting away rental boats. They see me, and out they come in plastic kayaks, 2-man kayaks, each one of them. And they're coming out in a hurry. They get to me. Are you okay? Yes. I get in the kayak. Off we go to the shore. I get out. I talk to, I call my wife. How are you? I got hit by lightning. I think I'm okay.
Very casual conversation.
Do you want to go to the hospital? No, I'm hungry. I have no idea what that's about. I don't know if lightning works up an appetite. That's kind of new to me. I go in, I change my clothes. I come out. The lake is surrounded. They're looking for me. They didn't see me come out. Somebody they called. So we have the police and the fire department and ambulances and the crowd, and I have to go tap the police on the shoulder to everybody to go home. So I haven't even started a race yet, and that's how I get going. But when I thought about that, there were some real lessons to take from that. And they relate to a lot of things, what's going on right now with the virus. One of the things I learned was that change can happen suddenly. That storm came out of nowhere. This virus came out and boom, here it was. I mean, 6 months ago, who would have thought this? Our lives were in one place. But what happens is that when change happens, you have to come up with a plan. Like, what's the plan? I knew I could not stay in a reactive place. That's a lower brain function. That's the primitive part of my brain asking it to solve a problem. So what I did is I got very curious and I got in a problem-solving mode. The people that are doing well with this have done that. The people that are having less time are either reacting to it, they're in denial about it, they have all kinds of strategies, but they're not responding to it effectively. And then the next thing I learned was, I needed to ask for help. I got in there and then I had to get out of there. So, I didn't ask for it, but there I was. So I needed to basically get myself out of that dilemma. And the last thing I learned was to basically take some lessons from that. So, for a lot of people now, when they see me go out in the lake, if there's not at least a little blue sky, I'm not swimming. I mean, it's like, I put my wetsuit on, turn around, come right back out. People say, what are you doing? I said, I got hit by lightning once. I said, okay, I get it. Better you than not me. So there's all kind, there's lessons that we can learn from these things that happen to us in our lives. And so, I took all those things and I really sort of, I'm not happy for the experience, but I learned from it. And then I think the last thing that I learned from that is when you're trying to figure out what to do and what you learn from something, it's very important that you're honest with yourself, but not in a judgmental way. I mean, I'm not in the water going, you dummy. I mean, what are you doing in here? I mean, it happened. Now I just have to deal with it. I mean, people can second guess themselves oftentimes, and it's just not a real effective way to deal with solving a problem. It takes enough energy to solve the problem rather than just to take an energy and siphon it off about, well, I should have done this and I could have done that and what would have happened differently. So, you learn a lot of things from this.
Absolutely. And one of the big ones that you said, asking for help, a lot of times, our ego comes in the way of, asking for help. We think we can do it all and we don't ask for help, right?
So much, yeah. Nothing of importance is really done alone. Another quick story, if I may.
More stories. Go for it.
More stories. My stories have stories. So this is before the Ironman. So this is when I was in my marathon phase. So I had just done a marathon with a friend of mine. He was going to do the Chicago Marathon the next year. And he said, do you want to do the marathon? I said, no, I don't want to do the marathon, but I'll train with you. Well, training with somebody for a marathon is that's nothing to fool around with. So this is before we bought the house, and we were staying at and we had rented a house. Now, the way you got to our house was you would drive down this road, and there was a cow pasture, and you would open the gate, drive through the cow pasture, close the gate, and keep on going. So I decided the first morning we're there that I'm going to go out for a 2-hour run. So my wife said, would you like me to drive you out to the road? She offers to help. I said, no, that's okay. I'll just run across the cow pasture. Now, cows are kind of stupid, so I wasn't worried about the cow. Unbeknownst to me, in the herd of the cows was the bull of the herd. Now, I don't know if this bull thought I wanted his cow wives or what the deal was, but this bull starts chasing me, and I am moving, and this bull is behind me. I get to the fence. I'm probably 30 seconds ahead of this bull because this bull was flying. I get there. As I go to put one foot over the fence, my other foot gets caught in the fence, pulls the fence away from the post, and hyperextends my left leg straight up over the top of my head. I fall down. The bull stops, snorts at me, sort of like, and don't I want to see you back here again. I get up. This is the beginning of like a 2-week vacation. I mean, we're a very active family. We hike, we kayak, we swim, we do all kinds of things. Not me. No, I have to sit there, and I think at the time our youngest daughter was like 3 years old, and I got to play, Barbie dolls in the blanket or something. I mean, because I didn't ask for help. All I needed to do was get a ride across the cow pasture, and this thing doesn't happen. So oftentimes we take twice as long to do half as much, not nearly as effective as we could be if we brought somebody in and just gotten another perspective and another point of view. I mean, so many times you look back, I don't think much of anything that we really remember in our lives was accomplished alone. I love when people say, I'm a self-made person. Oh, really? You wrote the book that you read? Oh, really? No. If you look back on anything you've done of real significance, somebody was involved somewhere in that success, I would maintain.
Well, one of the things I like about, on this note is, when you do have, people that you work with, when you're working as a team, there's a sense of satisfaction that you get to celebrate with others that we're part of the journey.
Yes, that whole sense of community that we did. Like, look what we did. Like, look what we accomplished. There is this unique said that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That we really. So we are designed as a species to be in connection. We are connection. Actually, I mean, from the time we existed, we were connected to another human being with an umbilical cord. We came into existence connected. So we don't do really well when we're totally out of connection with other people. I mean, it doesn't work really well. I was working with eating disorder patients years ago at a hospital. One of the things I would do when I was finished working is I would go, and I was a rocker. So I would go to to where the preemies were, and I would rock. These were unfortunately, they were crack babies, or they were babies with fetal alcohol syndrome, and they needed somebody to hold them because they needed connection, or they would have what they call failure to thrive, which can be very dangerous for them as human beings. And so, I think we all go sometimes through this failure to thrive when we isolate ourselves from the other people and the gifts other people have to give us.
Now, Michael, 2 amazing stories, but I just want to rewind back a little bit because I'm curious, tell me a bit more about the experience. What does it feel to be struck by lightning? I know you said.
What it feels if you're struck by lightning, well, I have to tell you this. You don't confuse it with anything. It's not like, oh yeah, that's like when I get struck by lightning. It's an experience all in all. It felt like a really bad cramp. The feeling of electricity going through your body is kind of hard to describe, but you would know it it's kind of like if you stick your finger in a socket or something and get shocked, but it's like way more than that. And it goes through really, really fast. I mean, it was out before I noticed it, but I knew it happened. I mean, I was quite aware that something had kind of tingled me inside a whole lot. So that was a really interesting kind of story, but, I did the race. It was an amazing race. It was interesting going in because how you don't know what you don't know. And oftentimes people do amazing things because they don't know what they can't do. I was a poster child for that. 10 weeks outside of the race, all I'd been doing, I had no idea how to train. I mean, I knew what I was doing. I was 56 years old. I mean, my body's not designed to do this stuff. And I was having one overuse injury after another. If there had been a fourth discipline called rehab, I would have killed it because that's where I was most of the time. 10 weeks before the race, I had never ridden a bike more than 35 miles in my entire life, even though in 10 weeks I was going to have to ride a bike 112 miles after swimming 2.4 miles, but before running 26.2 miles. So I was seeing one of my doctors, and he had a professional triathlete that he was working with. And he said to me, why don't you go talk to her? So I explained my story, and it was very clear that I needed adult supervision at that point. And so she took me under her wing, and the 10 weeks was just brutal training. But I was, you're so committed. If you've ever been in one of these situations where you have a dream and you're just so invested, and all of your energy, it's just like, I don't know if this is going to happen, but I'm so far into it. I mean, when the race started, it was an out-of-body experience. It was like, oh my gosh, that moment you have sometimes where it's like, this is real. This is it. There is no more preparation. This is game on. And what happened was none of my times, there are cutoffs, and none of my times beat the cutoffs. But there was this magic that happened during the day. There are in town, there were 20,000 people. They were 6 deep. I mean, it's just the energy. It was palpable. You could feel this energy. Off I go. I don't know if I'm going to finish the swim. I do. I get on my bike. And for the first 8 hours or so, I'm thinking about, look at these people. I can't believe I'm out here with these people. About 8 or 9 hours into the race, this little voice said, you are these people. What are you talking about? You're here. You see, I mean, they're not leaving. You see them around. You're one of them. And so off I go. I get to I finish the swim. I get to the run. All of a sudden, the times begin to work, and I finish. And it was overwhelming. It was just an amazing. I cried for 2 days. I mean, I just didn't know emotionally what had happened to me. About a week afterwards, I went into a deep depression. I was just sitting in town, and all of a sudden this whole feeling came over me. Nobody understands me. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. I called my coach. She said it's called post-Ironman syndrome. She said, you just spent months toward one focus. It's like going to the hospital and you're pregnant, but you didn't get a baby. You have a hat and a shirt and a medal and a story. But of course, people don't understand what you went through. The average person's never going to do this thing. Of course you do.
Have you thought about? Yeah, I was going to say, have you thought about maybe contacting some of the other contestants?
Well, I had, and they could understand to an extent. But your experience is so unique because it's an amazing kind of sport because you're with other people, but it's an incredibly supportive environment. The athletes are so encouraging one another because we all know what each other is going through. We're in this very unique sort of group that most people will never, ever know anything about. So we have an enormous amount of respect and appreciation. It's the only athletic competition I know where the person who finishes dead last is a hero because most of the time they just make it. Right under the wire. I mean, they've been out there for 17 hours and a minute to go. Some people will miss the cutoff by seconds, and it doesn't count. It's a pass-fail course, and you don't get the designation. I mean, I think you have the accomplishment, but you don't get the designation. It was so amazing that I just said, this is too amazing to have one time. I have to do this again. Off I go, 2008. Now, meanwhile, I've discovered that I have a torn rotator cuff. And so I go to the doctor. He said, you have a torn rotator cuff. I thought he said cup. I didn't even know what he meant. I said, well, is that bad? He goes, that's not good. I said, well, I'm sorry. I got this race I'm training for. We're going to have to talk about this later. So I do the first 2 with a torn rotator cuff. I get in the water, the second one I'm in, and it's raining. Well, the 2 years before, I freaked out because it was raining. It was a beautiful day. And I said, you begin to learn. Don't get ahead of yourself. So often we do that when we're trying to accomplish a goal. We start making up stories in our head. Well, what if this
Mm.
happens? Or what if that happens? Or what if this person says that? Or what if this person responds that way? Reality cannot match our imagination. We can imagine anything. And for some reason that I'm just not wise enough to figure out, in the absence of not knowing, people love to make up bad outcomes. I'm like, why don't you make up something good? That's not true either, but it feels a lot better.
Yeah.
Or, no, they say no news is good news. No news is no news. It's not good or bad. It's just no news. So here I go into this thing. I had learned the year before, a couple of years before, because I said, well, I'm going to do it in 2 years, give myself a year to sort of get myself back going again. Come out of the water. It's still raining. I go in to change, and it's a quagmire. There's mud in the changing area. I get on my bike. I'm soaked to the bone within minutes. And if you've ever been in one of those rains where it's so bad you have to pull your car off the side of the road, that's how it's raining. I mean, it's just pouring, and it's coming down so hard that it feels like people are throwing pebbles at you. It's the water bouncing off the pavement. Now, I have 112 miles. I have 7.5 hours of this nonsense to do, and I'm just, I'm like, what are you going to do? I mean, where are you going to go? This is mentally the most difficult day I've ever had in my life. It's mentally just unbelievable. It's so difficult. I don't know what to do. I don't want to quit. Again, you're so invested. You don't want to do that. It's pouring rain. It ends up raining 5.5 inches in 13 hours. But that's okay, because it's also 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm freezing to death. And you're wearing basically nothing. And even if you were, it wouldn't matter because you're soaked to the bone. I finished with the bike. I beat the cutoff by 15 minutes. That's 15 minutes away being disqualified. I start on the run, change into my running clothes. That's good because I'm dry for 5 minutes. I get out on the run course, and I don't realize it at the time, but I'm now I'm becoming hypothermic, and I'm becoming hypoglycemic, and I start to hallucinate. I see like concrete bunkers in the middle of the road. There's no concrete bunkers. I come into town. I'm getting ready to go out for the next 13 miles, which is emotionally difficult on a good day. This is just unbelievable. And I said to my wife, I don't know if I'm going to finish, but I'm not going to quit. And so off I go. It's what they call an out and back. So you turn around and come back. I'm about an hour and a half from the race, the day being over. I mean, the cutoff is in about 90 minutes, and I've had it. I am shot. My body is just not, I'm walking barely. And it's amazing how you'll have these moments in your life where unrelated kinds of things come together in a moment. Because what happens is the way change happens for human beings is change happens in an instant. The steps leading up to change can take a long time, but sort of the decision that I'm going to start a business, that's in a moment. You make that decision. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to ask that person to marry me. I'm going to move. Those changes, the steps may be a long time, but the change happens in an instant. So here I am, I'm walking, and numbers of things happened at the same time. The first thing that happened was I saw a sign. The race is held on a Sunday. And the sign simply said, don't make a decision today, you'll regret on Monday. Meaning that no matter how tired you are today, after a good night's sleep, you're going to feel better. And what I was dealing with is one of what I call the 3 unresourceful states. There's 3 states where we don't make decisions very well. One is when we're frightened. The other is when we're angry. And the third is when we're fatigued. And so I was in the third one, where I was just, my body was just shot. I was not really thinking clearly. So I said, okay, don't make a rash decision, whatever you do. Then something came to mind that my coach had said to me. I had gotten tendonitis in both knees 6 weeks before the race, and I was really compromised in my training. Not that at 58 you really need to train much. You can just kind of show up at 58. So my training wasn't going very well the last 6 weeks, so my conditioning was deteriorating. And I said to my coach, do you think I can finish? And all she said was, if you think you can, you will. If you want to, you will. And I'm like, okay, I want to. And then the last thing that happened, we'd been in a church service the night before, and the priest was an Ironman. He said, some good things are going to happen to you tomorrow, but they're not going to last. I thought, well, that's motivational. Thank you for that. I'll have to carry that with me on race day. But then he said, but some bad things are going to happen to you, and they're not going to last either. So often when we hit a rough patch, it's just a matter of working our way through it. So many times people can get derailed, and you just got to stick with that. And then the last thing that happened was there is a trailing vehicle that picks up the stragglers because they know they're not going to finish the race. I had heard about this vehicle. I'd never actually seen it in a race. I saw that vehicle. I said, that's not going to happen. I got mad. I said, that is not, no way are you coming to get me. I haven't been out in this misery this long. Here we go. Same thing as in the water. Let's come up with a plan. And I said, there were two people ahead of me. I said, let's go get them. You know, a lot of times when we get stuck and we want to get unstuck, what I tell people to do is just come up with a little something you can do different. Just a little something, not a big goal, not a goal with 15 parts to it. Just do a little something different. Just do, you know, you're having a hard time losing weight. Just change what you're eating a little bit today. Just a little bit. Don't adjust everything. That's overwhelming for people. 2 people caught those people. There were 5 more ahead. I said, go get them. I'm starting to move. 5, 15, 20, 25. I think I passed about 35 people. I finished with about 15 minutes to spare, but I finished. And that's one of my favorite races of all my races. I mean, I love my races like I love my kids. I love them all differently for different reasons. But the ones where I've had to dig the deepest, those have been the ones where have learned the most, where I've had the most kind of lessons. Because when you have an experience that forces you to go inside of yourself to a place you didn't even know was there, and you reach that point, you own something at that point. You own a mental strength that no one can ever take from you, that you have that there in your toolkit when you want to use it. My ability to focus and block out distractions, it's strong because I've had to do that so many times over and over and over again. Just work that muscle. Work that muscle of focus, that muscle of determination, of being able. I mean, I've raced in 95-degree weather, freezing rain, cold, and everything but an earthquake and snow is the only thing that's missing right now. And all those things together, I wouldn't have the mental conditioning that I have right now had that not been possible.
What I like about all is you've got a lot of great stories from your personal experiences, and you're able to throw in, the analogies to it with, some inspirational,
yes, yeah. I mean,
takeaway points.
Yeah, each one of them has one. I remember, this is the other thing that happens. When you've been through a rough time and you have adversity strike you again, you have basically a perspective that you wouldn't otherwise have. 2014, I'm back for, I don't know, it must have been the 5th one or something. I decided in 2010 that I had rotator cuff surgery. I was healthy. I trained healthy the whole time. I had my best race. I said, this is it. 3 of these was a wonderful experience. Our youngest daughter at the time had started doing triathlons. Dad, will you do one with me? How can you tell your kid no? Okay. But then I'm not going to do any more. 2 years later, can we just do one more? Okay, that's my last one. Then my son-in-law shows up. Can you train me to do one? Now we're into a thing. At that point, I'm like, you know what? I don't even believe me anymore. But in 2014, it's another one of those weird kind of days. By now the weather is what the weather is. I mean, I'm not worried about that anymore because I have no control over it. So it's one of those weird days. We don't know if it's going to be cloudy or sunny. And then finally I start the race. I have smoke goggles, clear goggles. I'm going back and forth. Oh, it looks like it's going to be sunny. I put them on. I have earplugs in. The race itself is very unique in Lake Placid. The swim course has a metal cable that you can follow. So you can swim in a dead straight line. And so racers really covet being on that cable. Now, not everybody can get on there, but if you can, it's a fast trip. I'm on the cable. I have earplugs in. And there are kayaks and canoes out there in case people get in trouble. So I'm coming back on the second loop. I'm almost finished. And a kayaker starts coming toward me. He's kind of pushing me off of I'm starting to get annoyed because he's pushing me off the cable. I go back on. He pushes me again. I stop, take my airplane. What's going on? He said, lightning just hit the lake. Everybody out. I thought, oh, great. Well, if lightning hits again, at least they'll kill 2,000 of us. I won't die with friends. I'll die with friends this time. I won't die alone. Off I go. I'm like a flying fish going to the shoreline. I mean, I wish they had a clock on me because I was killing it. We get there. It's pouring rain. Now, remember, I've been through rain. There are people that drop out of the race. Me, I'm going to the transition area going, this is not rain. I've seen rain. I mean, it's like 70 degrees. This is no big deal. I can see blue sky. This is no problem at all. So I had a huge advantage over people because I had suffered. And I had basically been able to overcome all that suffering. And so I had this ability to put that in perspective that I didn't otherwise have. So every time that happens, I came up with a strategy that, this was going to be the big year because I was aging up to be the baby in the 70 to 74 age group. So I was all excited. So, they've taken the races away. So I guess I'll just be a toddler next year at 71. So, I mean, I can't be the baby anymore, but I'll be a toddler. So I developed a strategy that I was going to start doing half Ironman races because I had discovered quite by accident in 2016 that I was not a participant anymore, that I was actually a competitor. I finished second in my age group, totally out of the blue, totally surprised me. And so here I go in 2017, Lake Placid is now introduced a half Ironman. I'm like, this is perfect. I train on the course all summer. I know it like the back of my hand. It's half the distance, half the wear and tear. This will be fantastic. What was not fantastic was the Canadian High that had decided to move into the area 1 week before that had dropped the temperature in the lake to about 61 Fahrenheit and the air temperature into the mid 30s Fahrenheit. This is not the kind of what I have prepared for. I go in the swim. It's freezing. I'm freezing. I get out of the water. I can't feel my hands. Normally, if you're in transition, it's, 5-8 minutes to get on. I'm in transition for 25 minutes. I think my wife thinks I'm dead or something. I come out of transition. There are 30 people behind me. I am like 30th from the dead end of the entire field. This is embarrassing. I'm not that bad. So what do we do again? I go back to my lessons. Here's a surprise that happened. Sometimes things get a lot worse before they get better. People will start a business and they'll struggle. Somebody, maybe their marriage didn't get off to a good start. Maybe, you moved to a new place and you didn't know anybody in the beginning, but you made great friends. I mean, all kinds of things can happen to you where it doesn't start that well. And I thought, okay, it didn't start off that well. What do? I stay focused and come up with a plan because I've learned how to do that. So my plan was my strongest of the three disciplines is the bike. And I know this race course like the back of my hand. I've been over thousands of miles I've ridden on this course. So off I go. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to count people. Let's see how many people you can pass. 50, 100, 200. By the time I get into town, I pass 350 people on the bike and I'm rolling. I get into the transition on the run. By the end of the race, I passed 650 people and I made the podium. And the reason was because I looked at this and it's like what adversity does is adversity basically reveals character. Adversity really shows you who you really are. It's really easy to talk about what you might do or what you could do if things got tough. But when things are tough, what are you going to do? And just that ability to stay focused and to realize, if things were going to get better, I was going to have to get them better. They weren't going to get better by themselves. I wasn't going to be a passive participant in that race. But so often in our lives, we use words like, I should and I oughta and, and I really meant to. That's a very confusing signal to your brain. Your brain thinks in two ways. It thinks conceptually or it thinks logistically. So when you tell your brain something like, I really need to do something about that. I really need to get in shape. I really need to lose weight. I really need to ask for that raise. I really need to start that business. I really need to make that move. Your brain's like, well, let me know when you have a plan because I don't know what you're talking about. If you say, I'm going to this way, I'm going to win. Now that's the logistical part, and your brain can start putting together a plan. So I did not say, I hope I pass some cyclists. I said, I'm passing cyclists. Let's get the plan going right now. I mean, it's your brain. It does what you say. It works for you. So, but it does what you tell it to do. So many times people come to me and they'll say, you know what? I really don't think that's going to happen. I'll say to them, then it probably won't, because you just set a negative goal, which your brain is more than happy to carry out. It's going to be really hard to get in shape. And every time I try to get in shape, and I tell myself how really hard it is. And, after about 2 weeks, I'm really discouraged. Okay, mission accomplished.
There's so many stories here, and so many of them can be very easily relatable to business, right? You've been in coaching business for 30 years. So overcoming adversity is one great example. Have you got any good examples from your coaching coaching business owners?
Sure. I mean, I would I would start with a couple of stories that happened in my own business. I started the business 40 years ago. In 1989 and 1990, we had a recession on the East Coast, and it particularly hit the real estate industry. I was very heavy into the real estate industry at the time. And so what happened was I basically lost in the course of a week about 60% of my clients temporarily. Now, we had 2 little kids at the time. My wife was a stay-at-home mom, and I was it. And so once again, you get focused in a hurry about what's going to happen. And so another thing I do is I do corporate outplacement. So when companies have to lay people off or part ways with them, they bring me in and I work with the people that are leaving. I realized I had not developed that part of my business enough. So what I did was I got that part of my business up and running. And when we had the big financial crisis in 2008, 2009, I had my best 2 years, because basically a lot of people were losing jobs, and here I was ready to help them out. So, you figure out what happens from you, and you learn from the adversity. And when I think about my clients, some of the things that have happened with my clients, I just, one of the things I do, I spend a lot of time working with leaders of organizations, some presidents or CEOs or those kind of people. And there's a phrase that it's lonely at the top. It really is lonely at the top for people. They often do things that people don't appreciate. They have a lot of people that are complaining about one thing or the other. And it's kind of like parenting, I mean, if your kid say every once in a while, thanks, it's not a bad idea, but, a lot of times they're going to complain and tell you what you didn't do or what they didn't get or what they don't have, I remember getting really upset with my daughter, my oldest daughter, when she was younger. I said to her, you have no idea how good you have. She said, no, because you made it good. Why are you mad at me? I thought, wow, that was point game set match all in one stroke. Nicely done. Nicely done, Rachel. Very good. Very good. So what happens a lot of times is that I find that when people are in a position of leading organizations and they get stuck, it's because they're not able to sort of get up at 30,000 feet and take that longer view and basically have the patience and the focus to be able to say, okay, one step at a time. And again, what I'm able to do is when they get stuck, I go in and say, okay, tell me a story about a time you got unstuck. I don't even care what the topic's going to be. Just tell me a story. I mean, I was working with an attorney long ago, was having trouble finishing a couple of key projects that he needed to get done. And one of the partners had asked me to come in and talk to him. And I said, tell me about a time you've really been successful. His entire tone changes. He said, 2 years ago, I lost 150 pounds and I've kept it off. I said, what does that feel like? Well, I'm really proud of myself. And what does it feel like to be able to sustain that? It does a lot for my confidence, because, confidence is really the sort of conversation we have with ourselves about what we perceive as doable and possible. Confidence is a byproduct of options. The more options you have to do anything, the more likely you are to feel confident you can accomplish the task. So I will oftentimes say to somebody, make a list of all the things you could do, even some things you probably won't do, but you could do. I don't like my job. Well, you could just quit and not work anymore. Well, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, but you could. I mean, you won't, but you could. So what happens is when you look at the success, you say, okay, when I had that obstacle, in this case of losing the weight, let's say, when I had that obstacle of losing the weight, how did you do that? Focus just a little bit at a time. What if we took this project and focused just a little bit at a time? Because that seems to work for you. I mean, I basically find out, kind of what's your secret. And we'll just use that. We'll just transfer that part that you already have. Because so often when people that I'm working with hit a roadblock, they think, well, I have to kind of reinvent the wheel. No, because success leaves clues. There's always clues in success. We look back. Most of the time, unfortunately, we learn two things from success: that I like it and I want more. And that's pretty much the lesson. It's like, no, dig deeper. There's more things there. We are all what's called blind to our own excellence. Nobody knows what it's like to be as good as we are. I remember in the 2014 Ironman when we were going to register, because these are just incredibly fit human beings. I mean, Lake Placid for a weekend is the healthiest place on earth. And these people are just kind of strutting their stuff. And I remember looking at my youngest daughter, Jane, and I said, look at all these people. They just think they're badass. And Jane looked at me and she said, Dad, we are badass. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I kind of forgot. Sometimes we forget how bad we really are. We're really something. We're really, so, to get somebody to look at when they were really something. What did you do that was really wow? And maybe you didn't think it mattered to the rest of the world, but that was your success and you owned that. And in the case of the weight, you lost that and you kept that up because you can focus and you can sustain and you can complete what you start. So oftentimes we tell ourselves myths about ourselves. Had a parent that sent their I think she was maybe 22 or 23, and she said, our daughter can't find a job because she's not organized and she's never on time. So to demonstrate that, she shows up for our appointment about 10 or 15 minutes late, which means she got 10 or 15 minutes left time than she would have otherwise. So we started talking, and she said to me, I'm not going to be able to be successful. I think my parents might have told you I can't ever be on time. I'm disorganized. Tell me some things about yourself, I asked her. Well, it turns out she was quite an athlete. As a matter of fact, she went to college on a full scholarship. I think she played field hockey or something. Was all conference, was the team captain. And I said to her, I've never heard of that before. And she said, what do you mean? I said, a team captain that never shows up on time. I was never late. I said, sure you were, because you told me you can't ever be on time. No, I was on time. I said, oh, so you can be on time. And you were the captain for like 2 years running and you're disorganized. I'm not disorganized. I was like, you just told me you were. So what we were able to do was basically I was able to show her those were myths that she was telling herself. Those were false beliefs that she bought into. They really weren't true. Could she be late sometimes? You don't be late sometimes, and from then on, she was early. She was early for the appointment. And then her confidence skyrocketed because she just realized she was giving herself messages about herself that weren't true. And so often we do that. I mean, so often we have these limiting beliefs about who we are and what we can accomplish and what we can make happen in our lives. And they're not true. And the opportunity to basically just destroy those myths is incredible, to watch that. I mean, I get so excited watching my clients' success. It's just such an amazing feeling to just watch people achieve. I mean, I get, when I don't race, on the years I don't race, I volunteer, and I get just as excited helping those people get to that finish line. We love to do what we call saves. That means an athlete comes to our to our aid station, and they're going to quit, and we get them back in the race. We adopt them. They become one of ours. I mean, I've actually had them over the years. And they have a name. They call us Iron Angels when we get them back in the race. And I get almost in its own way as much satisfaction from that as my own race. I mean, I love the race. I love to race. I love to be out there. I love to be able to be this fit to just be able to do it, to just be able to have the experience now. Because at this point, it's about the experience. It's about the experience and the lessons I'm going to learn, because those are the kinds of things that really stick with us as human beings. It's not what happens. It's, what do we learn from what happens? What are the connections we make to other human beings? What are the lessons that we can share? I mean, those are the things I think that really matter.
Yeah, that's priceless.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's the kind of thing, because at the end of the day, when all is said and done, all we really have are relationships. That's it. I mean, you're not taking this stuff with you anywhere. I mean, so it's like, that's one of the things that's happened is when people were forced to sort of like slow down, we began to change from human doings back into human beings. Suddenly people were reaching out to people they hadn't reached out for just to say, are you doing okay? How are you doing? And I think, I hope that we keep that part when we come out of this. I hope we keep that being part again. I mean, I hope we're able to learn those kinds of things, because this has been a great opportunity for people, if they wanted to be, to learn valuable lessons about themselves, just to really
Absolutely.
slow down. I mean, I just think we get so busy. We just get so busy with whatever we're busy doing. We're just so. Think of the questions we ask: what are you doing? What did you do? What are you doing? What are you doing this weekend? What are you doing tomorrow? Doing. How often do we say, "How are you?" Just how are you? How are you doing? Really, just to see what's behind that person, just to connect with them. That's what gives value and meaning to your life, for these connections. Are the other things great? They're wonderful. They're wonderful. Is success in business great? Yes. Yeah, and success as a human being, I think, is much more effective, though. Is it? Isn't it? It's not like the ones with the most toys at the end wins. That's not the deal. Do we do that? Yeah, we can walk around and have envy and jealousy of what other people have, or we can look and say, you know what? Like, what do I have? What works for me? What's the special things in my life? It's not that we don't aspire. I think our life as human beings is a search for more. I think it's always going to be a search for more time, more love, more money, more friends, more wisdom, more understanding, more patience. It's just always going to be, and I think that's fine. I think it's the achieving and the aspiring that really is what really gives our life the meaning. Once you accomplish it, the relationships I made, the training for the races is, I just have some of the funniest stories. The most fun I have training for the races, falling off my bike, getting lost. It's just fun stuff. It's really, just the thing, didn't think we could do that, but we did that. It's just the camaraderie and those kinds of things, the friends I made in the sport. It's just wonderful,
Michael, you've got a program for anybody listening for this last hour. It's been very inspirational listening to your stories, and who knows, some of the listeners might now be, enrolling into the next Ironman.
Or the
But
next thing in their life that is their Ironman. What is their next big goal?
that's right. That's right. And with your business coaching, for anybody listening and who is interested to know more about it, you've got a program, I believe, a signature keynote Iron Lessons. Is that right?
Yeah, Iron Lessons. Iron Lesson is that's my sort of my signature story that I tell. It includes some of the stories that we've been talking about today, where I mentioned those kinds of things. But my coaching, my website, go to the number 2, go to ctsonline.com, go to CTS, and people can connect with me that way. And also LinkedIn, Michale Bryant on LinkedIn. And so you can find me that way. And, I'm so blessed because I think people are so fascinating. This conversation we're having right now, if you and I were at a party, I would want to know all about you. Tell me about what you're doing, because I think people are so fascinating. I think everybody has a story to tell, and I just love to hear their stories.
Absolutely. And to add to that, even though you've probably talked 99% of this episode today, I do want to say, the reason I was, I didn't want to, jump in, because I was just really enjoying your story. And so for anybody listening out there, there's nothing wrong with that. This is the power of being a good listener. Sometimes you just got to shut up and listen, because there's a story, there's a wisdom, and you can learn from it. So it's been amazing to have you on the show today, Michael, and I'm sure we could go on for sure for another hour at least. So, why don't we look at maybe getting you on another episode soon?
I would love to. I would love to tell some more of those stories and some more of those lessons. There's always more stories, and I look forward to my next races and the new stories that are going to happen, because there's always going to be more. So yes, I'd love to come back. So thank you so much for having me. bit of
Now,
pleasure.
so when is your next race?
So we don't know now because
don't know, right? Still in the shutdown, I guess.
My Ironman was just canceled. They just canceled Ironman for June. So, but my body this time of year expects to train. So I'm training. You know, my body. It wants the training, and that's what it needs. It kind of goes to sleep in the fall, wakes up at the end of the winter, and it's just sort of like, where is it? So, you know, I was deep into my training for an Ironman, so I sort of throttled it back a little, but still I'm doing that. And so when we get up to Lake Placid at the end of June, now they might sneak one back in the fall. I don't think so. I'm really thinking 2021 is when it's going to happen again, because so far, you know, the World Championship has been postponed to February. They're going to have 2 of those next year. So, you know, we'll see. But I guarantee there's more adventures yet to come. There's going to be there'll be other stories.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye out on that, and we'll touch base and see where we're at. For me, for us over here in Australia, we're actually starting to see a bit of a reduction in the restrictions, but you know, I'm sure it's just a matter of time before it's everywhere else.
Where we're going, there's very, very, very few cases where we're going. I mean, minuscule amounts. So we're going to a very, very safe place where we get to do our favorite things. My wife and I, which is bicycle and run. So we'll be doing that. More of that to come. Yes.
Excellent. All right, Michael. Have a great rest of your day, and look forward to talk to you soon again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You be well, Vid.
Thank you.